Alright, throughout the course of this video, we're going to be trying to see what's going on with Tropical Storm Hilary. It looks like it's pretty close to making landfall in California, and it is at 60 miles per hour right now. So it is now a tropical storm. It's no longer a hurricane. Although, even though the storm hasn't itself moved in over Southern California yet, we are already seeing large amounts of moisture, as you can see on this imagery right here, moving into California, and that's leading to some heavy rainfall. I've already seen video of some flooding out there. So we'll try to look at the radar, be able to try to figure out where the largest amounts of rainfall are at the moment. We can look at the forecast to see when the rainfall might let up a little bit, and we can actually look at some individual stations to see how much rain we've picked up so far. So maybe a good place to start would be just with the radar. Where you see the yellow, that's where you're going to have the heaviest rainfall. So it looks like it's almost directly over Los Angeles at the moment. And then there also looks like there's another band up here almost near Bakersfield and over Los Padres National Forest. And then coming back to this page, this shows water vapor imagery, and it's just amazing to see that contrast between the dry air that's still over the central coast and then all of this moisture that's coming in from Hilary. We can also look at the actual imagery to see some of the clouds going on. Now, one piece of good news, it does still look like there's actually some smoke from our fires up in Northern California, but some good news is some of the rainfall from Hilary might actually bring some moisture to those fires and help put them out. But clearly you can see all the cloud cover we have over Southern California right now, and that's what's leading to the flooding. And that actually should probably be the first thing that I show here. Let's just, National Weather Service, not radar. I already have that up. So I just want to see where we have some flash flood warnings going on. Actually, this is a good first thing to look at. This is expected rainfall through tonight. So it looks like 1 to 3 inches along the coast, maybe 4 to 7 in some of the deserts, and then 7 to even 10 inches in some of the higher mountains. And what's going on with Hilary is a lot of the heaviest rain will be in the mountains, but then that rain has to go somewhere, so then that can lead to some flash flooding as it moves downhill. Now, you see a lot of different color on our warnings map here. So we have some flash flood warnings. We also have tropical storm warning. It is the first tropical storm warning in the history of California. Winds will increase late this morning and peak during the late afternoon and early evening. That's pretty much where we are right now. Steady weakening is then expected later tonight and Monday. So let's see why the strongest winds are expected to be late afternoon into the evening. It's because that is when Tropical Storm Hilary is going to be moving onshore, and it looks like we're very close at this point. I think it's maybe a little bit easier to see on the water vapor imagery, but if you zoom in down to Southern California here, it almost looks like you can see where that circulation is down here, and it actually, I don't know about you, but that looks like the center of the low to me. But other reports are saying it's not going to move onshore for another couple of hours. Okay. All right. Just want to pause this. Can I not pause this? Okay. Well, this page is freaking out. But you can see what I'm saying if I zoom in here. It looks like there's that little rotation right there, and then that's moving on directly over Southern California at the moment. So there's our low. You can see where the gustiest winds are associated with this. So from this little map of your winds, you can see that the strongest winds haven't actually arrived yet. The strongest winds are going to be in the next couple hours as that low starts to move in onshore. Then that's going to move into Southern California. Then keep an eye on the purple. As the low moves up into the Sierra, that's where the gustiest winds are going to go as well. And I am curious to see what some of our strongest winds have been. So if we come over here, if you look at the red numbers, that's going to tell you what your winds are right now. So largest I'm seeing, we see a 50 mile per hour gust right there. The max gust at that station was 54. That one has a 53 mile per hour gust. Then if we come over, let's check closer towards San Diego. So San Diego looks like it's actually pretty calm right now in terms of winds. It's 4 mile per hour winds. Their max gust was 17 miles per hour today. That's not all that much, and that actually does remind me of something else that's going to happen to these winds as it's moving into Southern California. Is, if you know this area, there's a lot of very steep topography around there. Oh, I just realized I should do that so you can see my pointer a little bit better. There's a lot of steep topography in Southern California. And just like we get Santa Ana winds during wildfire season where the winds are funneled through the mountains, that's what's going to happen to the winds around Tropical Storm Hilary. And that's where we're going to get some of those stronger gusts, is where you already have, 60 mile per hour winds with Tropical Storm Hilary. And then the storm itself is moving forward at 23 miles per hour. That's why you see the stronger winds on the east side of this low right here, because the low is moving in. So the low is moving forward. So you're already going to have your 23 mile per hour winds from just the velocity of the storm, but then you also have your circulation around this low. And then that's going to be around 60 miles per hour. So that's why you have your strongest winds on this side. It's because you kind of have the double whammy of you have your circulation around the low, but then you also have the speed of the storm just moving forward. So that's why we are yet to see some of the strongest winds. Those will be filling in fairly soon. Although, just looking at some of these gusts that we have right now, there's a 56 mile per hour gust. That was a 60 mile per hour max gust for this station earlier today. Right now we also have, let's check Los Angeles, because that's where, Los Angeles is where we've seen some of the heaviest rainfall coming in so far. And if we go up into the mountains, San Gabriel Mountains, yeah, we have a 51 mile per hour gust. The max gust there today was 64 miles per hour. And then it looks like 49 mile per hour gust. What's this one? 36 mile per hour gust. So yeah, we've already seen some gusts above 60 miles per hour. And that goes along, well, I guess gusts are different than sustained winds. I wonder if this also, let's try to pick one of these stations where we see some of the windy conditions. There's a 44 mile per hour gust, 43. We're coming to 3-day here. This should also be able to tell us the sustained winds. So wind speed mile per hour. Looks like 29 mile per hour wind speed with gusts up to 43. So tropical storm force is going to be greater than 39. Sustained, which is that blue number right there. So according to that station, we're not seeing it yet, but it's a pretty safe bet that we are going to see tropical storm force winds. And right there, we can actually confirm that Southern California has seen tropical storm force winds. You can see 52 miles per hour, 53 miles per hour, and you only need 39 mile per hour sustained to have tropical storm force winds. So, yep, it's going to officially be the first tropical storm to hit Southern California, or California, in over 80 years. And this right here makes sense where you see the purple. So we're looking at wind speed probabilities for tropical storm force. And much of Southern California, especially where we are seeing some of the strongest wind gusts, that is saying it's about a 90 to 100% chance of seeing tropical storm force winds. And then what's interesting is it even goes all the way up into the Southern Sierra. Let's see what that yellow color is. That's about a 30 to 50% chance, pushing all the way into Nevada. And then right there you can also see the overall path of the storm. So that probably should have been the first thing I showed. this is the path of the storm right here. And there's a few different things going on. So one, you notice it no longer has an M on it. It had that when it was a major hurricane. It no longer has an H on it. It had that when it was a hurricane. It is now a tropical storm. And what's interesting is it's still expected to be a tropical storm by 11 p.m. tonight when it's this far inland. So usually when hurricanes move in to closer towards California, let's see if I can find this one. So the reason that this storm has downgraded in intensity is it was expected to. When it was down here, when it was a Category 4, that's because we have very warm water. That's like the fuel for your hurricane. And then as it has moved up, it's moved into this cooler water that you see right here, almost right on that dividing line. That's going to be greater than 80. I can't really see my pen right there. And then this is going to be less than 80. And once your water is less than 80 degrees, that's going to weaken the storm. And that's exactly what we've seen. So that's why it's no longer a hurricane, it's a tropical storm. And then once it moves on land, it's cut off from that energy source entirely, and then it's supposed to weaken even more. And that's why it's interesting to see that it's still going to be a tropical storm that far inland tonight. And we do still have 60 mile per hour sustained winds on it. So as long as it's above 39 mile per hour sustained, it'll still be a tropical storm. So a few different colors. That's the cone going on right there. Then it's a tropical depression once it's almost into, looks like Oregon at that point. This kind of orange shading is current wind field estimate. So that's where you have your tropical storm force winds. You notice it extends a little bit farther on the right side of that low than on the left side. That goes on, or that ties back to what we were saying earlier about how your strongest winds are going to be on the east side of this low because the storm's moving forward and you have circulation around it. So, where were we? So yeah, we're going to see tropical storm winds, very widespread. And what the point I was trying to make on this orange right there is that's the area where you see those tropical storm force winds. So although the low is right there and the eye of a hurricane always gets the most press because that is right around the eye, you have the eye wall, that's where the strongest winds are going to be. There's a much larger field where you do see these strong winds. So that's why the areas that'll be seeing tropical storm force winds is as large as they are. Now with all that being said, the winds aren't the biggest aspect of this storm. It's actually what's going on with the rain. And that's where our largest impacts are going to be felt. Now interestingly, it doesn't look like we're seeing that much rain over on the southeastern sides of California at the moment, unless maybe we just don't have good radar coverage over there. Let's check our other radar. Our other radar is saying a very similar thing as well. Looks like a lot of our heaviest rain is directly over Los Angeles at the moment. Let's just refresh that page. So in terms of rainfall, let's look at the timing here. So that's goes along actually very well with the radar that we're looking at the moment. And then let's fast forward to 2 p.m. Yeah, I'd say that's pretty accurate for the time being. Let's go back to radar. Head on down here. Yeah, so you see those two heavy bands. And then that goes along. This is now looking at a model. So now we're going to go forward in time to see when this rain is going to be strongest in Southern California. So that's 5 p.m. And that's when the low has moved even north of San Diego, where that's where you have your very heavy rainfall out there. And then watch as your storm path goes up into the mountains. They have very heavy rain. That's at 8 p.m. tonight. And then we get into 11 p.m. tonight. Still seeing some heavy rain down in Southern California, but the low itself is now moving up into the Sierra at that point. 2 a.m. Monday, still have some heavy rain out there into 5 a.m. Monday. And then by about 8 a.m. Monday, it looks like there might just be a few lingering light showers out there. But the heaviest stuff is behind us. Now, one other thing we can do, this model's not going to be fully loaded yet. Oh, actually, it's looking pretty good. So this is going to be a more recent model run. So that's 5 p.m. So this is going to be more accurate than the one we were just looking at. This model just updated. So there's our low. That's 5 p.m., 8 p.m., 11 p.m. tonight, 2 a.m. tomorrow morning, 5 a.m. tomorrow morning, and then 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, still agreeing with the previous model run that most things will clear out by then. So looks like heaviest rainfall, or most widespread heavy rainfall, is right now to 11 p.m. tonight. That's when we're going to see the largest amount of flash flooding, and especially in the deserts and the mountains, and especially on the eastern side of the mountains. So this, there's a lot of mountains around here, San Bernardino, San Gabriel, and usually you have your winds coming from the ocean. So that's why a lot of the times, or that's why we have deserts over here in the eastern portions of California. It's because you have the rain shadow effect. So usually a storm comes in. We don't really get that much rain in SoCal, but what rain we do get, storms move in, it hits these mountain ranges, the air rises up, it squeezes out a bunch of rainfall that falls on the western side of the mountains, and then by the time that air gets to the eastern side, or what you'd call the leeward slopes, then the water has already been squeezed out of it, and then you have your deserts over here. Now this storm is different because you can see, because of where the low is moving, our strongest winds are on the eastern side of the mountain. So now what's usually the leeward side is now the windward side. So then we're going to have these winds pushing lots of moisture into the eastern sides of the mountains here. As that air lifts up, it's going to cool down. Cold water can't hold as much, or cold air can't hold as much water vapor as warm air can. So then as the air rises, it cools, it squeezes out that water vapor into liquid droplets, and then it falls as rainfall. And because our winds are so strong, there's going to be a lot of rising motion up those mountains. And then on top of that, we are also bringing in all of this moisture. I wonder if there's so many people on this website right now that it's not working, because we're definitely having some trouble with this one. This will work. So you can see all the moisture that's going to be moving in right here. That's going to be getting pushed in to our mountains, and then that's why we could be seeing 6 to 10 inches of rainfall for some of our mountain areas, and then that has to go somewhere. So then that's going to go down to the lower elevations and lead to some flooding. And we already have flooding out there. If you look at the National Weather Service, they have all kinds of warnings down in Southern California right now. Too many to even click on. If we were to click on flash flood warnings, the list of places goes on and on. It would take me, I plan on being live for about an hour. It would take me probably the entire hour to read where we have all this flash flooding caused by thunderstorms. Yeah, I couldn't possibly read through all of those. So that's saying until 6 p.m. tonight. Life-threatening flash flooding, heavy rain producing flash flooding in and around the Apple and El Dorado burn scar. So that is one thing that I haven't talked about yet, is where you've had wildfires in the past, the roots and the plants that hold your hillsides in place aren't going to be holding that hillside in place anymore. So then if you get very heavy rainfall on that, it saturates the soil and basically turns your hillside into a liquid. So we could go over to some of the websites I usually use for wildfire forecasting. Let's come down to Southern California and let's turn on fire history. So So I imagine red is going to be where some of your more recent fires are. And looks like we have all kinds of fire history around here. So imagine this looks like a pretty recent fire. You got heavy rain on that. It looks like it's in some steep topography as well. There's too many. That might be the 2010 Fairview, maybe. Hard to tell. But then that can lead to some landslides, some debris flows. So I'll be watching that as well as all of the heavy rainfall that we're seeing out there. Just want to show watch duty. So I did do a wildfire forecast for all of these fires going on in Northern California. Those actually might be helped by Tropical Storm Hilary. Looks like they are going to be getting some rainfall over the next couple of days. So if I come down here, this one has last 5 years fire history. So this map's going to be more helpful because that shows us where the very recent fires are, and that means the fuels haven't been able to build it back as quickly. So not sure what fires they are. We got one right there, one right there. Up here, I remember actually covering that fire. That might have been maybe the Silverado. Not exactly sure. But that would be a prime area where we could see some landslides. So that's something to think about right there, because you have a fire, burns out the fuels, those roots aren't holding the hillside in place. Then you have Tropical Storm Hilary coming in, dropping 6 to 10 inches of rainfall on some of the mountains. That saturates your soils, basically turns your hillside into a liquid, and then that could lead to some landslides down in this area around, looks like Arcadia, Altadera, Glendora. Oh, and it does show the name of the fire. That was the Bobcat in 2020. Yeah, I do remember covering that one. And then maybe this one was the Silverado? Let's see. El Dorado, 2020. And then let's see what this fire was. That was the Fairview 2021. Yeah, I covered all those fires down there. So, yeah, whenever you have heavy rainfall coming in, you have the potential for landslides, mudslides, debris flows, whatever you want to call it. So, yeah, I'm actually glad we read some of these warnings that we have going on here, because it reminded me of that factor that I hadn't really even thought of yet. So this is another U.S. tornado potential. What is this one? Interesting. I have not looked at this one yet. So let's see what happens if I click this. Yeah, interesting. So this map right here, it almost looks like the low is over Southern California right now. A lot of the other reports I was reading was saying the low wasn't going to move on for another few hours. But, I mean, based on that, that looks like the low has moved on. I'm curious to go back to Twitter here. Let's search Hilary and see if anybody else is confirming that the low has moved onshore, because it certainly looks like that to me. That was 2 hours ago. The low is in Baja, California. Here's some of the flooding that's going on. Already seeing some flooding out there. That's Tropical Storm Hilary in Sheep Canyon, northeast of Los Angeles. And keep in mind, the actual storm hasn't, or the actual low hasn't moved over Los Angeles yet. So this is really, unfortunately, just the start of the flooding that we're going to be seeing. So while widespread light to moderate rain is now falling across Southern California, heavy-duty convective bands are now developing to the east and are entraining extremely moist air from the Gulf of California. You can see it right there. It's these bands that will cause big-time flood problems later. So just going back to our model, that's where some of this moisture starts getting sucked in, and then it's going to bring all of that moisture, move it in, lead to some heavy rainfall, and we have heavy rain through tonight, and then it looks like we're calming down by tomorrow morning. Now, I want to see if the latest model run has updated the expected rain totals. So let's click through right here. Let's go. So right here, that's showing 1.9 inches for Los Angeles, 1 inch for San Diego. Where you see the yellow, that's going to be maybe 4 to 5 inches. And that's the American model. Let's see what the European model is saying. And I think I have a theory for why. So that's showing 3.4 for Los Angeles, more up in the mountains. And keep in mind that this isn't going to be the most high resolution. So in local areas here, we are still expecting maybe 5 to even 10 inches of rainfall in some of the mountain areas. And that's why we have such a widespread risk for flash flooding. So looking at this map right here, it looks pretty similar to the last time I looked at it. But where you see the purple, that's where you have at least a 70% chance of flash flooding. The red is going to be at least 40%. The yellow, at least 15%, and then the green, that one stretches all the way up to where we have some wildfires going on in northern California. That's a marginal risk of flash flooding. So you can see that path that the storm is going to take, that is where the greatest risk for flash flooding is. That's the main area that I'm watching right there. And if you look at the radar, we are already seeing this map has been incredibly slow. Maybe it's because they try to show us so many ads. Yeah, let's just click out of there. This radar is working a little bit better for us. So let's try to see if we can see the circulation around this low here. So is that maybe the eye right there? Of course, the eye kind of became a lot more disorganized over the last couple of days as we were moving in over the much cooler water. The storm decreased in intensity and kind of fell apart a little bit, but that's exactly as you would expect. But it does almost look like, be interested to know if other people think that is the center of the low pressure system right there. It certainly looks that way to me, and one way you can tell is on the right side, it looks like the rain's moving forward. On this side, it looks like the rain is maybe moving down. Over here, might be moving this way a little bit, especially down there. So that does look like the center of circulation to me. And then you can see where we have some of the heaviest bands. That's where it's taken some of this moisture, even some of this moisture from, was that Gulf of California right there. And then that's getting pulled into this system. And look at some of the heavy rainfall that's starting to show up over here. You see the yellow and even orangish colors over here. That goes along perfectly with what that tweet was just saying that we were looking at, where you have the very warm water picked up right here, and it's just being pulled into California. And you can see how much moisture is already being pulled into California. And where the greener color is, that's where you have even more moisture. And there's more set to move in fairly soon here. But I don't know, that looks like the center of the low to me. So a lot of reports were saying we weren't going to see the low move into Southern California until maybe like 5 or 6 o'clock, but I don't know, that looks like the center to me, and that's San Diego right there. So interested to see if we have some very gusty winds in San Diego yet. So interestingly, the winds are still quite calm. That's very weird. 6 miles per hour, 4 miles per hour, 3 miles per hour. But then if you go farther out here, that's where you see some of the very gusty conditions. That's where we have 41 mile per hour gust, 48 mile per hour gust. Let's see what the strongest gust there of the day was, 54 miles per hour. And then we haven't looked at rainfall totals just yet. But I'm interested to see if anybody's picked up more than an inch or two already, because we do have a lot more rain on the way, and just based on what we're looking at on Twitter, it looks like we do already have some flooding going on. So just zooming in down here, let's see, this station in San Diego's picked up over an inch, Escondido's about an inch, Oceanside 1.22 inches. What about Santa Ana, 0.87, Anaheim, 1.31 inches. Los Angeles, seeing a lot of stations with 1 to 1.5 inches. Wow, that station right here has picked up 5 inches of rainfall. Seems a little anomalous if you look at the other stations around there. Maybe that one's a little bit broken. Let's check out some of the mountains. San Gabriel Mountains looks like 1.31 and 3.56 right here, 4.49. So these are actual rainfall totals throughout the day today. Yeah, interesting. That goes along very well with what we were talking about earlier, where because of the low, you actually have your moisture being pushed in on the east side of the mountains. That's the opposite of what you usually have. Usually your moisture is moving in from the ocean, so you get more rain here and you get deserts over here. Now our rain is moving in from the east. It's rising up, being squeezed out, and it does look like a lot of our higher rainfall total numbers are on the eastern slopes of the mountains. 3.7, 2.5, 3.1, 3.2, and then over here, 1.6, 1.0, 0.86. So you can see how that's working out in real time, and then you can also think about the fact that on the eastern sides here, where you have more desert areas, those areas aren't used to absorbing this much rainfall, so that's where you're most likely going to have some serious flash flooding out there. That one is even showing almost 7 inches of rain already, and the storm hasn't arrived. Again, you can't really confirm these numbers here because, as a meteorologist, one of my jobs is looking at weather observations every day, and a lot of times the observations will be wildly inaccurate. But you can see how the wind speeds have been increasing basically the entire day. And then, not sure what's going on. So that's maybe our precip rate. Oh, that's the pressure. Huh. Confusing charts. Oh, the labels are on the bottom of the chart. That's a little confusing. They should space that out a little better. This one is precip accumulation. So you can see how we've just gone up and up and up. And so it looked like they picked up some very heavy rainfall between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. Kind of plateaued for a second there, and then from 1 p.m. until now, 3 p.m. is where we've now picked up almost 7 inches of rainfall at the station, 6.94. So that's the most that we've been able to find so far. So it definitely makes sense why we have such widespread flash flood warnings at the moment. So now let's head on back over to Twitter. I want to see if we can see any more of the footage here. There's some flooding. Let's see where that is. Cathedral City. Oh, poor dog. All right. I'm going to to throw on the radar here. Let's see if we can look at Southern California specifically. Yeah, let's maybe go sub-regional. This will probably be a good view for us. One sec, I'm going to drink some water. So where you see the yellow-orange, that's where our heaviest rainfall is. And then right there, that looks like what would be the eye to me. And I forget where I read this earlier, but someone was saying that the tropical storm Hilary went from the ocean onto land, and then it was actually going back onto the ocean before it was going to go back onto land again, which isn't actually a good thing. That means it would be able to pick up a bit more moisture out there, but that looks like the center of the low to me. So now, let's just kind of go over a lot of the information that we've been able to find so far. Yeah, I feel like we can confirm that's the center right there. So that's why we're seeing a lot of the very heavy rainfall right now, falling over Los Angeles down to San Diego. And then, gonna keep an eye on these bands over here because that's where you see some of those yellow pockets. That's where you're going to have even heavier rainfall. And that's some of the moisture that's being pulled in from the Gulf of California. So there is the area in orange that is going to see tropical storm force winds. And then the storm track is going to move in by 11 p.m. Sunday. It should be right about there. And then it continues to move up into Nevada. And that's why Southern California into the Southern Sierra is seeing most of the impacts with this. Not much going on for the Central Coast or the Bay Area. I'd actually be curious to see if we're getting any rainfall in the Central Coast or Bay Area yet. It looks like there might be something just about to move in pretty soon. When I was forecasting this morning, it looked like our best shower chances were going to be overnight tonight and then into Monday. And then where you see blue, that is where you have your tropical storm warning. And there's all kinds of different warnings going on at the moment. The bottom layer, stretching from Southern California almost all the way up to Tahoe, is your flood watch, where you see that gold color, that is going to be your high wind warning. And then the red is, well, there's two reds there. One is your tropical storm warning, and then the other one is your flash flood warnings. And we have all kinds of flash flood warnings popping up over Southern California at the moment. There's too many for me to even try to go over them all. So let's click back right here. That looks pretty close to where the low itself is right now. It looks like it is spinning off of the coast. Now it's going to move up, and then as it does, watch what happens to the winds here. So this is pretty close to right now. We've seen some of the very gusty winds already in Southern California. We were seeing some gusts around maybe 45, 50 miles per hour right here. But that's going to just continue to spread out over Southern California as we get into 8 p.m. tonight. It's going to spread the tropical storm force winds, and then as the low moves up and it takes that path right there, it's going to be taking these tropical storm force winds with it. So moving up like that, and then by tomorrow morning it looks like things have significantly calmed down. So this is your potential for tropical storm force winds. The purple is basically a guarantee, 90 to 100%. But what's interesting is you even have about a 40 to 50% chance stretching all the way up into the Southern Sierra, and then a marginal risk all the way into Nevada. And then on top of the winds, we have the heavy rainfall leading to flash flooding. And I would say this is actually the greater risk when it comes to Tropical Storm Hilary. And just a reminder, it's at 60 mile per hour winds right now. And that's why it's no longer Hurricane Hilary. To be a hurricane, I believe you have to be more than 74 mile per hour sustained winds. But the storm decreased in intensity as we moved over the cooler water. And from central Baja California to Southern California, it's been decreasing from a category 4 to a 3, 2, 1, and then now it's a tropical storm. And then looking at the path, it looks like it's still going to be a tropical storm by 11 p.m. on Sunday, but then it's finally a tropical depression by the time we get into tomorrow morning. So once it moves on to land, it's cut off from its energy source, which is the water, and then it's going to diminish. But it looks like it's kind of holding on to a lot of its energy even as it moves into the Sierra. And it'll be holding on to a lot of its moisture as well. And just to take another look at the moisture, let's go mid-level. So this is, it's kind of hard to see at first. That's Bay Area, Central Coast, Southern California. There is this little dry pocket way for the end of this loop right here. And you see this one little pocket of dry air that's moving in, but then very moist air to the left of that. And that's why when we look at the radar here for Southern California, we actually do have this little pocket where we don't have as much rainfall right now, but then places in Southern California around Los Angeles seem to be getting some very heavy rain at the moment, where you see those yellow bands moving through. So we looked at the potential for tropical storm force winds, and then we have greatest flash flood risk over the next 3 days. That is a good image or graphic. It's the best image or graphic I can find for exact areas where we have the most concern, because flash flooding is the largest concern with this system, and then where you have the highest chance of that flash flooding happening. That's the key areas that I'm going to be following throughout the rest of the day today. That's where we have at least a 70% chance right there. And then red is your moderate, so at least 40%. And then even a 15% chance all the way up into Oregon and Idaho and over Tahoe as well. But yeah, it's really Southern California into the Southern Sierra, and especially for some of the mountains and deserts, which are going to be seeing the majority of the rainfall, but then they're also not used to absorbing that much rain. Now let's look at some of the actual winds out there. So current observations, 48 mile per hour gust, got a 45 mile per hour gust, 47 mile per hour gust. And in all of these areas, your max gust of the day is going to be stronger than that. Max gust there was 53, 47, 45. I believe we saw one gust earlier around Los Angeles that was 60 miles per hour. But again, the largest impacts from the storm are going to be rainfall related, so let's just break down the timing there. This is the GFS. And, I think I'm going to officially switch to the European model, because I think the European model has the position of this low just a little bit better, because it's more offshore, and just based on our imagery, it looks like the low is offshore right now. But I mean, both models are pretty similar in what they end up saying. So let's go, that's 2 p.m., heavy rain, that's pretty close to where we are now. And then you start to see more of those kind of pockets of showers showing up in the southeastern portions of California. And that is something we're seeing. And overall, it's drier air, but then you have these little pockets where you have very short bursts of heavy rainfall. And luckily, those look like they are moving relatively fast, which is good news, because you wouldn't want one of those to just park itself over you. That would lead to very large accumulations of rainfall. But those little areas, that is where we're going to see some heavy rain out there. Then we go to 5 p.m. That's where the low is just south of Los Angeles and Riverside, north of Oceanside. Looks like it's at about 995 millibars at that point. Right now it's at 990 millibars. And the higher that number gets, this is an estimate, but the less intense the storm is going to be. When it was a category 4, I forget what it was. It might have been like a 960 or something. Don't quote me on that. Then as we get into 8 p.m., so 5 p.m., 8 p.m., that's where we have widespread heavy rainfall. You could think of all of the moisture around this low that it's been pulling in from the Gulf of California, that it picked up as it moved up the Pacific, and all this warm water down here. That's when it's going to be dropping it, and especially on the eastern side of our mountains. That's one thing I keep talking about here is if we go back, You can see how around this low, you end up getting these easterly winds pushing into your mountains. That air is going to lift up. It's going to cool down as it lifts up. It's going to be squeezed out, and then you're going to get, in total today, maybe 6 to 10 inches on the eastern side of these mountains, and then that water has to go somewhere. It's going to rush downhill, and we did look at some of our burn scars. We have some pretty big recent fires in this area, so that's where there's the risk for some mudslides and debris flows as well, because the hillsides aren't going to be locked in place as well. And, while we're thinking about it, we could actually pull that back up, because that actually could be one of the most important things we think about throughout the day today, because those are the kind of events that can really catch people off guard. So we had the El Dorado fire 2020, where it was Fairview. We have Fairview 2021. We've got the Bobcat Fire 2020, Lake Fire 2020. So anywhere where you see some fire history on this map, that's where we have an increased risk of mudslides, because the hillside is no longer held in place by the root systems of the plants that all burned away. And then this is 11 p.m. tonight. So that's where the low starts to really move up into California. So that matches up perfectly right there. 11 p.m. Sunday, that's where this tropical, it still says it's going to be a tropical storm. Then let's go right there. Maybe, it's hard to see where the low is at that point, but we're just going to estimate it's right there. It looks where that looks to be where the heaviest rainfall is. And then by 2 a.m., we're almost in the clear at that point. And then by tomorrow morning, looks like the rainfall has moved on at that point. So just looking at the rainfall totals, it looks like eastern side of the mountains. That is where we're going to see the largest amount of rain. And then also in that stretch, that's going to be seeing some of the heavy rainfall throughout the night tonight. So there's your path right there. We already looked at that. The storm, if you need, there's maybe 2 silver linings with this system. One is that it's at least going to continue to decrease as it moves on to land. So we're going to go from maybe 60 mile per hour winds to 50 to 40 until we're a tropical depression. Bad news is it does still look like we're going to be a tropical storm all the way this far inland. And then the one other silver lining, if you need it, is, now that we pulled this fire page up, there are a lot of wildfires going on in Northern California right now. We had a lot of thunderstorms this last week, and you can see Smith River Complex, that's 25,000 acres. We've got the Lone Pine Fire, 1,500 acres, Head Fire, 6,000 acres. Those areas, Sur Bluff Complex, 2,000 acres, those areas have a good chance of picking up some rainfall over the next 2 days. And it looks like it's going to be lighter rainfall up here than what we're seeing in Southern California. Obviously, that's not saying much, because the rainfall we're going to be seeing in Southern California today is about as heavy of rain as California is ever going to see. But what we're hoping for the wildfires up there is that we get enough rain to put the fires out, which would be great, but not so much rain that we get any mudslides where the vegetation has just been burnt out. So we'll definitely keep an eye on that. But overall, this system is going to lead to some very, I never like to say the word catastrophic, but there may be some catastrophic impacts due to the flash flooding. Winds, we'll see maybe some damages there, but it's really the flooding that is the problem. And especially where you have mountains picking up 6 to 10 inches and then that water rushing down. So, storm is going to decrease in intensity, and it already did decrease in intensity. I've had a couple people ask me this, because it's very hard to communicate this, where I say, oh, we were a Category 4 hurricane, and then now we're a tropical storm because the winds are rapidly decreasing. And somebody says, oh, the storm's dying, so it's not a problem anymore. That's not exactly how how it works. Let's see. Let's get our arrow right here. The storm has moved up like this. When it was in this area, that's where it has very warm water. That's where it was strengthening. And then right when it crosses this little boundary right there, that's where you go from water that's above 80 degrees and your storm's going to be strengthening to water that's below 80 degrees and your storm's going to be weakening. And then for a little while it looked like it moved over Baja California, and when it moves over land it also decreases, and then when it bumps into the mountains that we have in Baja California, it seemed like that messed up the organization of the storm a little as well. So we've always known that it was going to decrease in intensity, but it's still a tropical storm, and California hasn't seen a tropical storm for over 80 years, and the tropical storm warning that we have right now, that red color, that's the first tropical storm warning that we've ever had in California. So this is a very rare event, and hopefully it does not happen again. But part of the reason this is happening is because of how warm the oceans are right now. We have El Nino going on, and I could do a quick explainer on El Nino. So in a normal year, you have trade winds that blow from east to west. That takes your warm surface water and it pushes it to the western Pacific. So the western Pacific picks up a bunch of rainfall, and then, as any surfers know, we have very cold water around California. Now, during an El Nino year, what's going to happen is your trade winds aren't going to be as strong, so some of that warm water that was pushed over to the eastern or the western Pacific is going to move back to the eastern Pacific. And that's why when you look at this area around Baja California, if you look at this area around Southern California, that red color represents the above average ocean temperatures that we have right now. And then earlier when I was talking about with the fuel of a hurricane is warm ocean water. It's almost like how your car needs gasoline. Hurricanes need warm water. So when you have El Nino and more warm water moves over to Baja California, that's more fuel for your hurricanes. And that's a big part of the reason that we're seeing the kind of significant impacts that we are seeing from Tropical Storm Hilary. And there's actually another reason that this is happening. Let's see. I usually don't use this map for pressure, and that's why I don't use this for pressure. I think we might be better off going to pivotal, and let's go national. This is going to explain why Hilary has been steered into California, and then we're going to go upper air 500 millibars. Yeah, this is exactly what we're looking for. All right, so there's been 3 different things going on over the last few days that have led to Tropical Storm Hilary moving into Southern California. We've had this low off of the central coast, and that's been kind of, you see that counterclockwise circulation there? That's been keeping Hilary pushed over here. You can see how those winds on the bottom push from west-east. That's been keeping Hilary close to Baja California, while at the same time, we have this massive ridge over Central America. That's why we have excessive heat warnings from Texas, looked like throughout most of Middle America. And that has clockwise circulation. So then, on the bottom side, that's going from east to west, kind of pinching Hilary together between the low that's off the central coast and the high that's right here. And then, look at what happens between those two systems. I'm going to switch over here. So you're going like this, and then around the high, you're coming up like this. So both of those systems together are leading to Hilary getting kind of pinched between those two and leading directly into Southern California and into California. So we don't usually see systems move up like this, and we also don't usually see above average water temperatures like that. And it's all of those things together that's leading to Tropical Storm Hilary moving into Southern California, creating some of the heavy rain that we're seeing out there, creating the tropical storm warning, and then some of the flash flooding that we're seeing at the moment, as well as the tropical storm force winds. So lots of different things going on. I think that might be a good place to wrap it up, because I think we've covered just about everything that I can cover for right now. And then I have to get ready for the evening news, and then I should be coming back on tonight to do another forecast as we continue to see the heavy rain move in over Southern California. So hopefully you found this video helpful, and thanks for watching.